Hey, what's up, guys? Alright, so Black Clover Chapter 204 is out, and this chapter is literally just a flashback set up to basically give us the relationship between Nero and the First Magic Emperor. And right away, before we begin the chapter, I just want to point out that in this chapter, when we see Nero in the past 500 years ago, we see that she doesn't have those horns that we see her with in the present day. Now, where the chapter ends off was basically 500 years ago when the elves were massacred, right before the Great Demon King was summoned by the Lich. And that's where the chapter actually ends up ending off. So we don't know. Maybe after that point, because we do know that the First Magic Emperor does die after that, because he has Nero take him to the skull of the Great Demon King and then seal him on top of it. So we know that sometime after the Great Demon King dies, the First Magic Emperor dies. So somewhere between their fight and where he's sealed off, we can see that she actually somehow gains those horns. Now, it could even actually be after that. It could be after she ends up becoming one of the anti-magic birds, and maybe that's a side effect of her sealing herself inside that form. We don't know. We'll end up finding out the truth about that later on. But basically, what this means is that, unlike what I said in the previous chapter, Nero is actually human. So I did some research, and I ended up finding out two important facts about the word Lumiere. And basically, based off these facts, I ended up finding out they fit so well with the First Magic Emperor's characteristics and personality that we've seen so far in the flashbacks and up into this chapter, that basically there's no way that this was something that Tabayuki thought of last minute. This is actually something he had planned earlier on in the series. So the first thing I ended up finding out was that the name Lumiere actually means light in French, which basically, if you go off the characteristics of the First Magic Emperor, with his light personality and the fact that he wears light clothing and the fact that I believe he was actually blonde, if I remember correctly from the anime, then yeah, it actually goes, like I said, very well with his characteristics and something that actually was probably planned early on from Tabayuki. And then the other thing I ended up finding out about the word Lumiere is that it derives from the word Lumieris, which was actually the name for the Age of Enlightenment in the early 18th century, which, and this is actually very important to the First Magic Emperor's characteristics, was based on battling against religious and political persecution. So yeah, basically, it was basically about stopping people from persecuting against each other for religious and political means, which ding 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 actually goes well with the First Magic Emperor's personality, because we know that his main thing was creating a world where people of all races could be equal. And also with Nero's name, I did some research on that, but I couldn't really find much. Basically, every search I did kept leading to the same conclusion, that the word is supposed to mean secret. Now, I'm not exactly sure if that's what it actually ties to, or that's what Tabayuki was planning for that. I can't think of right now what a connection with her characteristics and the word secret would be, besides the fact that she was secretly Nero, or she was secretly a human this entire time and not an anti-magic bird. Anyway, finally getting into the actual chapter is basically we see that Nero, or as I should say, Sekre, from the beginning of the chapter, we see her, she's introduced as a noble girl who, because of the fact that her only magic ability is stealing magic, she was deemed unnecessary, so she was basically sent to be a servant to the First Magic Emperor when he was still the prince. And basically, that's pretty much all there is for her character. She's sent to be his servant. She's initially, a little hesitant to do it because she's heard bad things about the First Magic Emperor, or about Lumiere. But after she initially meets him, she sees exactly what he's like. The two of them hit it off very quickly. She begins to develop like a love and respect for him. And we just see throughout the chapter that she actually does care about him. In fact, the only times we ever seen Nero smile, or Sekre smile, throughout the entire series was in this chapter twice. The first time when when she's interacting with the First Magic Emperor in the beginning, she slightly smiles after meeting him for the first time. And then when she actually sees him interacting with Lich and finally seeing him being able to talk and interact with someone on equal level to him, because the Lich was as powerful as the First Magic Emperor and had the same ideals. She was smiling. We saw her smiling in the chapter because she could finally see the First Magic Emperor found a friend that he could actually truly be equals with. We also see during this chapter that the First Magic Emperor and Julius actually had a lot in common when it came to the fact that they both had an extreme interest in magic over everything else. In fact, when we first meet Lumiere in this chapter, that's literally what he's doing. He's head first into books, researching new things about magic. But the only difference between the two of them, which is basically while Julius was interested in seeing other people's magics and seeing their battle power, Lumiere is actually interested in researching magical tools and finding ways to distribute mana and magic to everyone so that they would be equal. But still, the same thought was pretty much, the same characteristic was pretty much there. The fact that they both are intensely interested in magic over everything else. And the comparison between the two actually just further highlights the fact that by the end of the series, Asta will end up becoming the Magic Emperor of the Clover Kingdom. because he actually does have pretty much all those same characteristics, besides the fact that he is not at the current moment the most powerful member of his generation. Now, by the end of the series, he could most likely be the most powerful person in the Clover Kingdom, but as of this point, that's literally the only characteristic that he doesn't have in common with the other two Magic Emperors that we've seen in the series. So we end up fast forwarding to basically the day of Techia and Lich's wedding, and we all know what happens on that day. That's basically the same day that the elves get massacred. And what we end up finding out is that the reason why Lumiere actually wasn't there at the wedding ceremony, which I never noticed, but I actually did go back and you can actually, if you look at every image of that wedding, we never see a picture of him. Basically, the reason why he actually wasn't there is because of the fact that on the wedding day, which, by the way, Techia and Lich, despite the fact that their relationship was public knowledge to everyone in the kingdom, their wedding ceremony was actually held secret, and the location of it was held secret. And the only person besides Techia who knew the location and the fact that they were getting married was Lich. And that's the reason why everyone, or was Lumiere, which is the reason why all the elves believed that he betrayed them. But what we end up finding out is that on the same day of the wedding, he was supposedly called by their father, who was the king at the time, to come meet with him. And then right after he was done with the meeting, he was planning on heading over to the ceremony to celebrate with his best friend and his little sister. But what we end up finding out is that it actually was a trick by the demon. The demon actually possessed, I believe, one of the counselors to the king, called him over under false pretenses, used his word magic to bind Lumiere in his place so that he can keep him there long enough to enact his plan of basically using the nobles and the royals of the current era to kill off all the elves. And the demon's plan actually almost worked. Lumiere was trapped in the binding magic, and he actually wasn't able to get out without the help of Nero, who actually showed up at the last minute to use her sealing magic to basically unbind him from the magic. And the two of them right away just flew off to the location of the wedding. And as soon as they got there, they see that the elves and everyone have been massacred, including Techia. And this is actually a very key important moment, because this is actually fully develops and actually gives us a full story of what happened during the massacre. So what we basically end up seeing is that, one, we finally get full confirmation that Lich actually did summon the Great Demon King. I mean, it's kind of been confirmed earlier on, even though we got a rewritten history of what happened. But basically, yeah, we end up finding out that he actually did end up summoning the Great Demon King. But it was because he was almost falling into despair and actually almost gave in to the demon. But the second Lumiere and Sekre actually showed up onto the field and showed that they actually weren't there and they weren't responsible for what ended up happening to the elves. Lich immediately snapped out of it and actually was able to fight back against the demon enough to stop himself from being possessed by him, stop his grimoire from falling to the demon, and eventually just made his own choice. He sacrificed himself in order to activate the reincarnation magic so that the elves actually could come back to life later on in the future. And basically to give the humans a fighting chance against the demon. So basically, this has all been Lich's plan. He actually planned on having the elves. I mean, he didn't plan on having them go to war with the humans like they have been, but he planned on having them reincarnate later on. So seemingly, so the two races could come together and fight against the demon, which is actually what we're going to end up seeing by the end of this arc. Now that's pretty much where the chapter ends. But I do want to point out one thing. What we end up finding out is that the magical item that the nobles and royals used to kill off the elves and steal their mana actually was something that was seemingly developed, well, not seemingly, we know it was developed by Lumiere, but seemingly it was something that him and Lich were working on together, because the two of them had planned on using that magical device and the magic stones that the elves had possessed in order to basically share the mana throughout everyone in the entire kingdom, so that everyone could live as equals, so there wouldn't be discrimination against who had more mana, because everyone would have similar amounts of mana. It didn't matter if you were nobles or royals or a peasant, you would all have similar power level. And seemingly the demon was waiting for that magical item to be developed so he can enact his plan of basically using the humans to steal the mana from the elves and create discord and create despair in Lich's heart, so he can honestly take over his body and create a grimoire of despair. Now the chapter leaves off on a cliffhanger with basically the Great Demon King being summoned by Lich. Now, I don't know if the next chapter is actually going to show us the fight between Lumiere and the Great Demon King, and basically go full story with the whole backstory of the first Magic Emperor, and showing us exactly what happens during that fight and actually how he ends up dying later on. But as of right now, we can assume that either is going to do that in the next chapter, or we're going to go back to the present day and see Lumiere by the end of the next chapter meet up with Lich and everyone else and fight against the demon. But that's pretty much it for the chapter. That's it for the review, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, drop me a like, subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate it. Comment down below your thoughts and theories on the chapter. And I'll catch you guys later. Peace.